The New England Patriots. We've been hearing a lot of stories out in their camp that Mac Jones looks 100% healthier than he did last year. He lost a lot of weight. He's dieting. His arm is a little bit stronger. His accuracy has been fantastic. I mean, we all know what the Patriots like to do. They like to run the ball. They're 4 strong running backs. I mean, they've been in the offseason very, very quiet. Everybody was questioning Bill Belichick's, obviously draft, taking questions on an offensive lineman that a lot of people thought was a late second round, early third round pick. What were your thoughts so far this offseason? They had a very good season last year, and some of the guys really overachieved who they brought in the offseason. What are your thoughts to the Patriots this year? Do you think Mac Jones could take that next step as a quarterback in the AFC?
I think it's reasonable to expect progression from him, right? Being completely candid, I feel like what we saw out of Mac Jones last year was head and shoulders above what we could have expected from him coming as a rookie. I don't want to say it's, near his ceiling, but it was certainly the highest end of the range for his rookie productivity. Now, another year in the league, gaining more experience. Obviously, we talked about it earlier, Josh McDaniels has left New England, but, very much so still within that Patriot way in that New England system. I mean, he can certainly take a step forward. I'm just not sure where his fully developed ceiling is in the NFL. I could see him being right around top 12, top 14 quarterback in the league as soon as this year. But I don't know if there's much of a ceiling beyond that for Mac Jones in New England.
So a lot of wide receivers right now on the block, potentially after Deebo Samuel, DK Metcalf, and Terry McLaurin, 3 of them seeking new contracts. Do you think they'll re-sign with their current teams? And if not, is there a location that you would like to see any of those guys in?
Overwhelmingly, I do. Specifically, I think we see Deebo and DK return to their current team. Deebo is just so integral to that offensive scheme that Kyle Shanahan is running there in San Francisco. And I mean, you look at Seattle, they really don't have anywhere else to spend this money, right? He is, arguably, if not definitively, their best player and the type of player that they want to build around. So those 2 in particular, I think it's more likely than not that we see them ultimately staying place. Terry McLaurin is an interesting one. That was a name that really jumped out to me. It did not seem like the Washington Commanders were going to be keen on paying him what is now the market rate. And so far, it looks like it's playing out that way. In terms of where he lands, that's so difficult to pin down right now, right? With this uncertainty around wide receivers, it seems like NFL front offices are pretty definitively jumping into either side of the camp, right? They lean into the fact this is a valuable asset and they have to pay in order to have a premier talent at the position, or they want nothing to do with it and they trade away A.J. Brown for resetting the clock on a rookie. So it's hard to get a gauge for which teams are going to be, on either side of that spectrum. Ideal case scenario in terms of, where I would like to see him play. I'd love to see him pair up with Aaron Rodgers and, bring some real power to that wide receiver room in Green Bay. But, that front office, based on how they treated Devontae Adams, probably isn't going to be the most aggressive in that trade market.
Good, Mark.
When you look at fantasy football, what comes out to you as far as a position that doesn't get that recognized, that goes on to be successful in winning a league? Like, the running backs got to score touchdowns. Wide receivers got to have a lot of yards and a lot of receiving touchdowns. Quarterbacks got to throw touchdowns. Is it something on a defense that they pick or a field goal kicker? What do you think gets the most unrecognized in being successful in some of these leagues?
That's kind of difficult to say, right? I think with that level of granularity, it largely comes down to sort of the format of the scoring system of the particular league. One thing that I think is, universally underappreciated is just how additive a quarterback who is capable as a runner is to a fantasy football team. Mm-hmm. You look at Jalen Hurts, depending on scoring format, finished between QB2 and QB4 last year. Yep. And there wasn't a whole lot about his passing attack that was all that prolific, right? But if he's going to continue to score touchdowns with his feet, if he's going to stack up, even a moderate day at the office in terms of rushing yards, right? He goes out and gets you 40 yards rushing. That's the equivalent of a touchdown in most passing touchdown, at least in most formats, right? So, very much so, the rise of the mobile quarterback has been a theme for the NFL for the last decade and a half or so, but just how much that translates to a successful fantasy outcome is something that I think is a bit slept on.
And how do you guys decide that for each league that you're in? The scoring system is it the same for each league, or do you guys get to negotiate that?
I mean, at least as far as I'm concerned, it should be up for negotiation. Mm-hmm. For me, I carry more leagues than I like to admit on national radio or anything. But one of the stipulations for me to take on a new league is there has to be some wrinkle to it. Mm-hmm. It has to be 14 teams or 16 teams. It has to have a premium for tight end production, right. Or you have to start one running back instead of two. All of the variety of leagues that I carry, there's at least some differentiation from one to the other. So that way, the strategy and kind of the line that I take in trying to win a championship is at least incrementally different from the other leagues that I hold.
We are talking to co-founder Pros and Joe's Charity League, Eric Romoff, fantasy football guru as well. This offseason's been very, very interesting. And we mentioned the Jets, we mentioned New England, but really some of the other teams that really stand out that didn't do anything. And now we're hearing Baker Mayfield could be a Panther by the end of the week, which is crazy to say that they have Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, the 1 and 3 a couple of years ago, going to be a Carolina Panther fighting for the same position. Crazy to say that. But really the AFC, the transition of the AFC West with the Chiefs, the Raiders, with obviously McDaniels and obviously Adams and that built that new team with the way it was built. And obviously the Chargers and the Broncos. When you look at that division, I think this is probably one of the best divisions we've seen in a very, very long time, where you can predominantly see 3 out of the 4 teams make the playoffs. What is the surprise in this division, and what really stands out going into the season? Is it Russell Wilson being a Bronco and really revamping that offense, a Bronco offense that hasn't been the same since really when Peyton Manning was there early at the time that he was there? Or maybe the Raiders with Josh McDaniels, with Derek Carr and his buddy Devontae Adams and all the different weapons they have over there that really has transfused this team. So what has really stood out in the AFC West so far this offseason?
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on that it has been an arms race in that division, and I tend to agree. I would not be surprised if we see 3 teams make the playoffs out of this division in particular. In terms of kind of the largest seismic shift, it's got to be Russell Wilson heading into Denver, right? Devontae Adams is obviously a big splash. The defensive additions that they've tacked on there for the Chargers obviously make a huge impact, but nothing is going to move the needle like going from some combination of Drew Lock and Teddy Two Gloves to who I feel should be a Hall of Fame quarterback in Russell Wilson. So, I mean, it easily is the biggest increase in their position, in terms of what they've added to their team. In terms of what that nets them, I mean, they get to do all this and, fight for 3rd place in that division, but that might be good enough to still make the playoffs.
So strategy-wise, you look at drafting running backs early, and also a lot of guys counter that with the zero running backs that a lot of fantasy analysts like to do, and also the tight ends, drafting them early too. A lot of people did that with Travis Kelce last year and Darren Waller, guys like that. And while Kelce still did well, he was kind of streaky. So where do you stand on the strategy aspect of kind of these, I guess, extreme strategies?
Yeah, overall, I'm not the biggest fan of heading in with a definitive strategy, right? I kind of like to play the board a little bit more and try to attack the value as it falls to me. All of these strategies have credence in their own right, but because they're well documented and well understood, they also have a pretty clear way to counter it, right? So I think the best strategy overall is to have a very clear understanding of how you value the players in your drafts, and specifically break those player values into tiers, and then really just play the board as it falls. If there's value that's screaming at you, a guy that is 5, 8, 12 picks available 5, 8, 12 picks later than they should, it's going to be in your best interest to select that player and then adjust course as the draft goes on.